there are days when you think to yourself, maybe I should just leave now, you know, because it's definitely high. But I'm, delighted to be here. To be here and to be part of this particular celebration. 40 years is no small feat. Of course, and when you're a person like myself who now knows that, I have, like, as I call it, more yesterdays than tomorrows, I'm well aware of what those 40 years have been like because I lived through them. But, I'm also one of those people, and those of you who can see, an African-American woman. And I'm always so intrigued, when the month February, February, March, because those become my months. And I stop and I say to myself, we would get the two coldest damn months in the year, wouldn't we? What can I say? Couldn't get July, couldn't get August or September. No. You know what I mean? But part of it is too, that the other side of it is that, well, I'm glad we've got these months. And then I hate the idea that we have these months. Because, in fact, the celebration recognition should be a 12-month, a year, every day of the year, ongoing activity, which is why I so love this organization, because women are at the center of all they do every day. Come rain, come shine, come February, March, July, August, or September. But then I was also saying to myself, okay, so you're going to come to Connecticut and you're going to give this speech. So how are you going to do the hook? What's the hook? Because like these wonderful young women who wrote these, these essays, these winning essays, and when you set out to write something, you always want to have an angle. What's your angle and focus? And girlfriends, you got your focuses down, So I was like, how am I going to swivel into Connecticut and do this speech? And then, it's like, the goddess is good. I happen to be, surfing through the internet, and lo and behold, up pops the story about the snake charmer in the house. And I thought to myself, oh, they have to be making this story up. You know how you read some things and you go, no, he didn't. Did he really? Oh, and the snake joke, which, okay, for someone my age, that is like one of the most tired sexual innuendos ever. So, I first just sort of went, oh, how tired. Do you know what I mean? Bad taste, bad form. But then, of course, as often happens when I call it we get the bad boy locker room stuff, there's also that, inability to really man up and say, I really was wrong. So then, in trying to clean it up, he put the snake all the way down his throat. When he started talking about, interns and how, female interns are just a problem. Because it's so hard to be good when you got women working for you. I'm like, oh, no, he really didn't. But hey, what it also does is it constantly serves as a reminder of why we do, why we're here, what's important, what really matters, and how we have to talk about it. There are these, sayings that have become part of the, out there in the atmosphere, not the least of which is, one that someone, said earlier this morning. The more things change, the more they stay the same. One of the things that we are also have to constantly be aware of is, my Lord, during these 40 years, there have been enormous changes. Do you know what I mean? I have lived to see things that, I could not have even imagined were possible, in part because we didn't even have the words to describe the situations that we ended up struggling to change. I have seen laws made. I've seen attitudes shift. I love being able to work with young people today because, so much of what, I remember as recent history, they talk about as back in the day. And they could be, which I love, that's right, back in the day. It sounds like back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and, back in the day. But, you know, one of the things that we well know about that back in the day is that we can never assume that the changes that we have struggled to achieve, the changes that have become law, the attitude shifts that have happened are permanent. You know, the only thing that we can be guaranteed of, you know, in this world is that, you know, things change. Sometimes they change because of what we do, and sometimes they change because of the backlash to what we do. We can never assume, nor can we ever assume that the ideas and the quest for justice, because that's what we've really been talking about. You know, we're talking about gender justice. Yes, we talk about racial justice. We have, you know, there's justice, you know, that's needed on so many fronts. That this push to justice is something that just immediately gets passed on one generation to the next. It doesn't. Nor can we assume that, you know, or blame, I want to quote, those who followed us if we feel they are not, quote unquote, carrying the torch. You have to be taught how to carry a torch. We learn from watching others around us. So I'm not one of those people who will look at young people and say, you know, you should be doing more than this, or you should be more aware. I always look back at myself and say, girl, you have not been doing your job. You have not been raising the issues. You have not been staying on point. And I know, like you all know, that part of the problem is we're all busy. We all are so busy, and we also become comfortable. We keep thinking that, well, someone else will take care of that. We, you know, think that, well, you know, that woman over there will, you know, she's got that covered. Or we say to ourselves, well, we have this permanent commission, so, you know, they're on it. They're on it. That maybe, therefore, we don't also have to be on it. That we don't have to be vigilant, that we don't have to speak up, speak out, and raise hell. You know, the one thing that is so clear to me from where I happen to sit in this, you know, crazy place we call the world, the one thing that is really clear to me is that comfortable is a bad place to be. Comfortable makes us accept things as the status quo. Comfortable did not get us this far, and comfortable will not get us further, and we still have much, much further to go. The other thing I'm really clear about is that, you know, America is this fabulous place. So much opportunity. No two ways about it. But we also have a tendency in this country to overemphasize individual success. We have a tendency, we want, I call it the heroes, you know, and sheroes. We want people that we can look up to. You know, we want to say, boy, look at that Oprah. Boy, oh boy, look at how much money that woman has made. Look where she started, where she came. Hallelujah. You know, we talk a great deal about the need to keep, you know, moving to crack that ceiling, that glass ceiling as women. And what we know is, like, we're scratching it. We're scratching it, but that ceiling's still there. But what we don't talk enough about is something that a woman who was both a friend and a great mentor many years ago reminded me, the late, great Dorothy Height, the head of the National Council of Negro Women. Dr. Height, who was often the only woman in the room. Dr. Height, who was always the only woman in the room during most of the civil rights struggle. Do you know what I mean? Who certainly saw more stuff than I can even begin to imagine. You know, who reminded me that while it is important to, you know, look at the ceiling, we have to mind the floor. Because if we are not in the process of lifting the floor, raising it, then we, women, we, all the people who are looking for justice and greater access in this country, are going to be always up against the 8 ball. Because real change is what happens among the least of us, not for those who are at the top of the pyramid. And so, you know, that kind of real change, you know, is why you all are here today, why we're all here. Because we are, in a sense,